So we've converted our plugins, right? We have them working. Now we have a decision to make about whether or not we want to go into the OSGI world or stay in the war world or the traditional plugins that we've been working. So if you've taken some of the other courses that have talked more about OSGI, one of the new things that you may know of is that Liferay 7 and beyond is using the OSGI framework to help facilitate with modularity. Because of that, there is a whole framework, a whole paradigm behind the scenes that we need to adhere to, right? There's many benefits that have come from using OSGI. That's talked about in one of those lessons that you can watch. It's a free lesson, so feel free to watch that if you'd like. So one of the things that has occurred is the way that packages are revealed as dependencies to one another. They have to be explicitly declared. So you'll say this specific package is revealed to the OSGI container, and then another package can import it. We can then split our application into various parts, various logical parts, so that we are able to create smaller chunks of code, right, with a very specific functionality, and then we can recycle them or reuse them throughout our other projects. So the idea is we're trying to break up a monolith and become more modular and try to reap the benefits of what that has for us. So of course, the big question coming into this is, should we be converting to the OSGI world or not? So we're going to be going through a couple questions to help you guys decide whether or not to go into the OSGI world. So the first one is in regards to portlets. If you're following the Java standard, JSR 168, JSR 286, or the new one, but if you're following the Java standard and you want to stay that way, you're going to want to stay in your traditional war model, right? The OSGI framework doesn't quite follow the JSR 168 and 286. So if you want to stay compatible with the Java standard, you're going to stay the way that you are without going into the OSGI world. So that's going to be one of the big ones there, right? Do you want to stay in the JSR 168 or 286 world? A couple of other questions that we need to ask. Is our project that we're working with, is it heavily tied to some sort of Java EE programming model, right? Are we doing something like Spring MVC portlets, for example? If you are using Spring MVC, then you're kind of stuck in the war model. You have to adhere to that, right? If you are using other programming models and you want to stick that way, right? Sometimes the amount of work that you need to put in order to convert it into something that OSGI recognizes is a lot. It's very time consuming. And because of that, you might not want to put the time into it, right? So that's something that you need to consider. Is it big? Is it tied down by other technologies, right? Is it worth the time to convert? Does your application, does your plugin interact with other app server features, things like EJBs or message-driven beans or other things of those natures, right? If they do and you want to convert, right, you still have to figure out how does the OSGI module communicate with all of those things. And again, that does take time to figure out. Because of all of those different factors, you might want to stay with the traditional war architecture or war model. Some other things that we need to consider, right? Do we have an expiration date? Is there a specific lifespan of the plugin that we're working with? Are we dealing with legacy code? Are things being deprecated? Are things no longer being supported? Are we going to be sunsetting this application sometime in the future, right? Or maybe just again, coming back to time and money, right? We may not have all of the time, all of the money to dedicate to trying to convert to the OSGI world. So again, all of these are different questions that we need to consider, right? If anything over there, you're like, yeah, I'm probably going to be doing one of those things, or one of those things affect me, or I can say yes to some of these questions or any of these questions, then we're probably going to stay in the traditional war architecture. right? So again, a lot of these things will depend on your specific situation. Because of Liferay still being compatible with JSR 168 and 286 portlets, as of now, there is no harm staying in your traditional WAR architecture. Liferay will still accommodate for that, and it'll still allow for the deployment of your portlets. Now, when do we want to consider going into the OSGI world, right? Assuming we have all the time and all the money in the world. I know that's not always the case, but assuming so, some of the questions we might want to ask are, is our application ginormous? This is one of the reasons we at Liferay went into the OSGI world. We were growing bigger and bigger and bigger, and it was harder and harder and harder to maintain. So is our application just getting ginormous? Do we want to reveal parts of the application to other applications? These are two of the questions that we can ask in order to help guide us towards, do we want to go and use OSGI for our portlets? In general, if you have the time, it's better to try to future-proof your application sooner rather than later, right? Again, we did discuss all of those things previously. So if you're just trying to get into the Liferay 7.7.1 world, then by all means, just get there, right? We can make these decisions of converting later. But if you can get there first, right, that's going to be half the battle, right? Just getting your application to work in Liferay 7.1. Again, from there, we can then make those more crucial decisions on, do we need to convert? All right, so next up, we're going to be talking about what does it look like to upgrade our portlet plugin.